My daughter served me eviction papers on my 68th birthday. Standing in my own kitchen, the kitchen where I taught her to bake cookies, where we laughed over burnt pancakes, where I'd held her through her first heartbreak, she handed me a manila envelope with hands that didn't even tremble. "It's for the best, Mom," Jennifer said, her voice flat as a Kansas highway. "Richard and I need this house for our growing family. You understand." But before I tell you what happened next, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. We love to know how far our stories reach. My name is Margaret, and I thought I knew what loneliness felt like when my husband, Thomas, died 7 years ago. I was wrong. Real loneliness is standing in your own kitchen while your only child explains why you need to leave the house you've lived in for 43 years. It started 6 months earlier, though I didn't recognize the warning signs. Jennifer had always been ambitious. Valedictorian of her high school, full scholarship to Duke, climbing the corporate ladder at a pharmaceutical company in Raleigh. I was proud of her. Even when her visits became shorter, her phone calls less frequent, her patience thinner. Then she married Richard. Richard Chin was everything Jennifer thought she wanted. Harvard MBA, senior vice president at a tech startup, family money that stretched back 3 generations. He wore watches that cost more than my car and spoke in business jargon that made simple things sound complicated. He called me Margaret instead of Mom, and his handshake always felt like he was measuring my worth. They'd been married for 2 years when Jennifer first mentioned the house. "You know, Mom, this place is way too big for just you," she said one Sunday afternoon. We were having tea on the back porch, the porch Thomas built with his own hands the summer before Jennifer was born. "Have you ever thought about downsizing?" I looked at her over my teacup, the stranger wearing my daughter's face. "I like having space, sweetie. Besides, this is my home." "But it's not practical." She set her cup down with a sharp click. "The property taxes alone must be killing you on Dad's pension, and the maintenance. When was the last time you had the roof checked?" "The roof is fine. Your father reshingled it 10 years ago. It'll outlast me." Jennifer's mouth tightened the way it used to when she was a teenager and I'd said no to something she wanted. But she let it drop. For a while. The suggestions came slowly at first, like water wearing away stone. Had I considered a senior living community? Wouldn't I be happier somewhere with less upkeep? Didn't I get lonely rattling around in this big house all by myself? Each time I said no. This was the house where Thomas proposed on one knee in the hallway because he couldn't wait to get to the restaurant. This was where we brought Jennifer home from the hospital, where she took her first steps across the hardwood floors. This was where Thomas died in our bed upstairs, holding my hand and telling me he'd loved every single day of our 44 years together. I wasn't ready to leave. I didn't think I'd ever be ready. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Jennifer's voice crackled with excitement, real excitement, the kind I hadn't heard from her in years. 12 weeks. We wanted to wait until it was safe to tell people. My heart swelled with joy even as my mind registered what this would mean. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. How are you feeling?" We talked for an hour, the longest conversation we'd had in months. She told me about the morning sickness, the cravings, the nursery she was planning. For a moment, she sounded like my little girl again. "We've been looking at bigger houses," she said near the end of the call. "Something with a yard, good school district, but everything in our budget needs so much work, and with the baby coming." I should have heard it then, the setup, but I was too happy, too relieved that my daughter was talking to me like she used to. I missed all the warning signs. Over the next 3 months, Jennifer visited more often, but the visits felt different. She'd walk through the rooms with a measuring eye, commenting on the original moldings, the updated kitchen, the finished basement. Richard always came with her now, making notes on his phone, asking questions about the HVAC system and the electrical panel. "This house has excellent bones," he said one Saturday, standing in the living room like he was appraising merchandise. "Prime location, too. You don't see lots this size in the city anymore." Something cold slithered down my spine. Thomas chose this neighborhood because it was affordable for young families back then. We never thought about resale value. We were building a life. Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Everything has resale value, Margaret. That's just economics." After they left, I stood at the window watching their BMW pull away, and I felt the first real tremor of fear. They weren't visiting me. They were visiting the house. My 68th birthday fell on a Wednesday. I'd planned a small celebration, just me, some store-bought cake, and a video call with my sister in Oregon. Jennifer called that morning to say she and Richard would stop by in the afternoon. "We have a gift for you," she said, her voice bright in a way that made my stomach clench. They arrived at 2 o'clock. Jennifer was showing now, her belly round under an expensive maternity dress. Richard carried a leather briefcase that seemed ominous somehow, too formal for a birthday visit. I'd made coffee and set out cookies on the good china, small gestures toward normalcy while something inside me screamed that nothing was normal about this. "Happy birthday, Mom." Jennifer kissed my cheek, her perfume sharp and chemical. 68, that's a milestone. We made small talk for exactly 7 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the mantel, each tick feeling like a countdown to something terrible. Then Richard opened his briefcase. "Margaret, Jennifer and I want to discuss something important with you." He pulled out a folder, arranged papers on my coffee table like a general positioning troops. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about your future." "My future?" I tried to laugh. "At 68, I figure I'll just keep doing what I'm doing." "That's exactly the problem." Jennifer leaned forward, her hands clasped over her belly in a way that felt like a shield or maybe a weapon. "Mom, you can't keep living alone in this huge house. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one finds you for days?" "I have friends. Mrs. Patterson checks on me. The mailman knows to—" "That's not enough," Richard cut me off. "You need to be realistic about your limitations. At your age, independent living becomes increasingly dangerous." "My age? I'm 68, not 98. I'm perfectly capable of—" "Are you?" Jennifer's voice rose. "Because last month you forgot you left the stove on. Mrs. Patterson had to come over and turn it off." My face flushed hot. I had forgotten the stove once when I got distracted by a phone call. It happened. It didn't mean I was senile. That was one time. That we know about. Richard again, his voice maddeningly calm. "The point is you need care, supervision, and this house requires constant maintenance that, frankly, you can't manage anymore." The walls felt like they were closing in. "So what are you suggesting? A nursing home?" "Of course not." Jennifer reached over and patted my hand like I was a child. "There's a beautiful assisted living facility in Cary. We've already toured it. Garden views, activities, nursing staff on call 24/7. You'd be much safer there." "I don't want to be safe. I want to be home." "Mom," Jennifer's patience was clearly wearing thin. "Be reasonable. We're trying to help you." "Help me?" I pulled my hand away. "Or help yourselves to my house." The silence that followed was like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Richard's expression didn't change, but Jennifer's face flushed red. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I looked at them both, really looked, and saw the truth I'd been avoiding. "You want me out so you can have this house. Admit it." "We're thinking about what's best for everyone." Richard's voice had cooled several degrees. The house is too much for you. Jennifer and I need more space for our growing family. This arrangement benefits all parties." Arrangement? The word tasted bitter. You're talking about my home like it's a business transaction. Everything is a business transaction, Margaret. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Jennifer reached into her purse and pulled out another envelope. Her hand shook slightly as she handed it to me, and I saw something that might have been shame flicker across her face before she buried it. "What is this?" "Just open it, Mom." Inside were legal documents. I didn't understand all the terminology, but I understood enough. Eviction notice, 30 days to vacate the premises, property transferred to Jennifer and Richard Chen. I don't understand. My hands were shaking so hard the papers rattled. This is my house. Thomas and I bought it in 1982. The mortgage has been paid off for 15 years. Actually, Richard said, pulling out more papers, according to property records, you added Jennifer to the deed 7 years ago when Thomas died. Your lawyer probably recommended it to avoid probate. That makes her a legal co-owner. The room spun. I did remember signing papers after Thomas's funeral, but I'd been numb with grief, signing whatever the lawyer put in front of me. I never imagined. So because I added your name to the deed, you think you can just take my house? We're not taking it. Jennifer wouldn't meet my eyes. We're exercising our rights as co-owners. The house is worth approximately $800,000. We'll buy out your half, $400,000. That's more than enough for you to find a nice apartment somewhere, maybe closer to Aunt Beth in Oregon. Wouldn't that be nice? $400,000 to give up the life Thomas and I built. $400,000 to be exiled from my own home by my own daughter. And if I say no? Richard's smile was sharp as a knife. Then this goes to court. We'll demonstrate that you're no longer capable of maintaining the property or making sound decisions about your welfare. We have documentation. The stove incident, several late property tax payments, your failure to address necessary repairs. A judge will rule in our favor, and you'll end up with nothing. Plus, legal fees that will eat up whatever settlement you might get, Jennifer added quietly. Please don't make this ugly, Mom. We're trying to do this the right way. The right way. As if there was a right way to betray your mother on her birthday. I looked at my daughter, the baby I'd nursed through colic, the toddler I'd walked to her first day of kindergarten, the teenager I'd waited up for until she came home safe, the bride I'd helped dress on her wedding day. And I saw a stranger. Get out. Mom, get out of my house. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded hollow, ancient. Take your papers and your briefcase and your plans for my home and get out. Jennifer stood, her hand on her belly. For a moment, just a moment, I saw tears in her eyes. You have 30 days. Please use them to find somewhere nice, somewhere you'll be happy. After they left, I sat alone in my living room until the sun went down and the house grew dark around me. The shadows seemed different now, full of ghosts. Thomas laughing at the dinner table, Jennifer's prom pictures on the mantel, birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays that somehow added up to a life that was being taken away from me. I thought about calling my sister Beth in Portland, but what would I say? That I'd been so stupid, so trusting, that I'd signed away my security to a daughter who valued real estate more than family? I thought about fighting them in court, but Richard was right. They had documentation, money, lawyers. I had grief and pride and very little else. The only thing I had was one business card, yellowed with age, tucked inside my jewelry box upstairs. A card given to me 47 years ago by a man who said, if you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. I'd kept it all these years, never expecting to use it. never imagining I'd need to. But desperate times, as they say, call for desperate measures. At 9:47 p.m., sitting in the dark in the house I was about to lose, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom. My hands trembled as I opened the jewelry box, a wedding gift from Thomas, polished wood with a music box inside that played "The Way You Look Tonight." The business card was tucked beneath my wedding rings. The edges were soft as fabric from age, the writing faded but still legible. James Morrison, attorney at law. Beneath that, a phone number with a local area code. And on the back, in my own young handwriting from 1978, "He understands." James Morrison had been Thomas's best friend since they were kids in the same rough neighborhood in Durham. While Thomas went into carpentry, James fought his way through community college, then law school, then a career defending people who couldn't defend themselves. He had been the best man at our wedding. He was Jennifer's godfather, though she barely remembers him anymore. After Thomas died, James had moved to Asheville to be closer to his aging mother. We'd exchanged Christmas cards for a few years, then lost touch the way people do. The last card I got said he'd opened his own practice specializing in elder law. Elder law? I thought it was depressing when I read it, imagining James dealing with nursing homes and wills. Now it seemed like Providence. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed the number. It was late, and the number might be disconnected after all these years. And even if it was, what would I say? Help me? My daughter is stealing my house? It sounded absurd even in my own head. The phone rang 3 times. 4. I was about to hang up when a familiar voice, deeper and rougher with age, but indisputably his, answered. "Morrison? James?" My voice cracked. "It's Margaret. Margaret Taylor." Silence. Then, "Maggie?" The nickname he and Thomas used to call me. No one had called me that in 7 years. "Maggie, is that really you?" And just like that, I started crying. Great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest, from the place where I had been holding everything together since Thomas died, since Jennifer stopped calling, since I realized I was alone in the world. "Maggie, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Do you need me to call someone?" "No, I couldn't get the words out. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. It's late. I don't even know if you remember me." "Remember you? Maggie, you were Tommy's whole world. Of course I remember you." His voice gentled. "Talk to me. What happened?" So I told him. Everything. The pregnancy announcement, the visits, the birthday ambush, the eviction papers, the threat of court if I didn't comply. It all poured out in a rush of words and tears. 7 years of loneliness and 6 months of growing dread. When I finished, the silence on the other end stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, he cut himself off. "I'm sorry. I know she's your daughter, but what she's doing is unconscionable." "Can she do it? Legally?" "It's complicated." I heard papers rustling. "Adding her to the deed was smart for probate purposes, but it does give her ownership rights. However, evicting a co-owner, especially a parent, especially for financial gain, there are ways to fight this." Hope flickered in my chest like a candle in a storm. "Really? Really? But Maggie, it's going to get ugly. Jennifer has resources, and from what you're saying, she's married to someone who thinks like a corporate raider. They'll fight dirty. I don't care." And I was surprised to realize I meant it. This is my home, Thomas's and mine. I'm not giving it up for without a fight. "Good." I heard the smile in his voice. "Tommy would have been proud of you. Listen, I am in Asheville, but I can be in Raleigh by tomorrow afternoon. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and don't leave that house. You understand? As long as you're in residence, they can't do anything without a court order." "I understand. One more thing, Maggie." He paused. "I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be hard. Jennifer might say things, do things that hurt. Family law cases are the worst because they destroy relationships. Are you sure you want to go down this road? I thought about Jennifer's cold eyes as she handed me the eviction notice. The relationship was already destroyed. I'd just been too heartbroken to see it. I'm sure. Okay then, I'll see you tomorrow. And Maggie, you're gonna be fine. I promise. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, the business cards still in my hand. Tomorrow, the fight would begin. Tomorrow, I'd have to face my daughter in court and probably watch whatever remained of our relationship crumble to dust. But tonight, for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than fear and sadness. I felt angry. And anger, I was learning, was a much better fuel than grief. James Morrison arrived at my house at exactly 2 p.m. the next day, just as he'd promised. I watched through the front window as a silver Lexus pulled into my driveway, and my heart did a strange little jump when he stepped out. 47 years had passed since I'd last seen him in person, at Thomas's funeral, where he'd held my hand during the service and told me I'd never be alone. He'd kept his hair, though it was steel gray now instead of black. He was broader than I remembered, with the solid build of someone who took care of himself. Wire-rimmed glasses gave him a distinguished look, and when he smiled up at the house, my house, I saw the same gentle warmth that had made Thomas his best friend all those years ago. I opened the door before he could knock. Maggie! He said my name like a prayer, and then his arms were around me and I was crying again into his expensive suit jacket, breathing in the scent of coffee and old books and something that reminded me of safety. I'm sorry, I mumbled against his chest. I keep crying. I never used to be such a mess. You're not a mess. You're human. He pulled back, holding me at arm's length to study my face. You look exactly the same. I laughed despite everything. Now, I know you need your eyes checked. I'm 68, James. I look every day of it. You look beautiful, he said simply, and something in his tone made me blush like I was 20 years old again. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Jennifer had served me eviction papers, and James spread out his own papers. Legal pads, copies of property records, a folder thick with documents. Okay, he said, slipping into lawyer mode. Let's start with what they have. The deed shows you added Jennifer as joint tenant with rights of survivorship in 2018, correct? That's what my lawyer recommended after Thomas died, to avoid probate. Standard practice, but it has consequences. As a joint tenant, Jennifer has equal ownership rights. However, he held up a finger, forcing you out of your primary residence through eviction is a different matter. North Carolina law protects homestead rights, especially for elderly residents. I'm not elderly, I protested automatically, then caught his amused look. Okay, fine, I'm elderly. What does that mean? It means the courts take a dim view of adult children forcing aging parents from their homes, especially for financial gain. We can argue undue influence, elder abuse, even fraud if we can prove they manipulated you into adding Jennifer to the deed. But they didn't manipulate me, I did it willingly. Did you understand the full implications? Did anyone explain that Jennifer could use this to evict you? I thought back to that awful week after Thomas's funeral. The lawyer's office, signing papers I barely read, just wanting everything to be over so I could go home and grieve in peace. No, I admitted. No one explained that. James made a note. That's a start. Now, tell me about the documentation they mentioned. The stove incident, late tax payments, maintenance issues. My cheeks burned with shame. As I explained, the stove, one time, one mistake. The property taxes, I'd been late twice in 7 years, both times by less than a week, because I'd forgotten to mail the check. The maintenance, some loose shingles on the garage, a leaky faucet I kept meaning to fix, normal wear and tear on a 40-year-old house. That's it? James looked almost relieved. Maggie, that's nothing. They're building a case for incompetence on one forgotten burner and 2 slightly late tax payments? Please, I've seen people with dementia manage more than that. So you think we can fight this? I think we can destroy them." His eyes hardened in a way that reminded me why he'd built a reputation as a fierce advocate. "But I need to know something first. Do you want to fight to keep the house, or do you want to fight to hurt them back?" The question startled me. What's the difference? The difference is strategy. If you want to keep the house, we fight the eviction, establish your competence, maybe force a buyout where you buy out Jennifer's share instead. Clean, quick, minimal damage. If you want to hurt them, he paused. Then we dig. We find out why they're really so desperate for this house. We expose every dirty secret, every questionable motive. We make it public and messy and devastating. I don't want to hurt Jennifer. The words came automatically, the reflex of a mother who'd spent 40 years protecting her child. But even as I said them, I felt the lie. Part of me did want to hurt her. Part of me wanted her to feel a fraction of the pain she had caused me. James must have seen it on my face because he nodded slowly. "Here's what I suggest. We start by fighting the eviction, but while we do that, I do some quiet investigation, see what we can find. If it turns out Jennifer and Richard are just misguided but well-meaning, we settle quietly. But if they're hiding something," he met my eyes, "then you'll have options." "What kind of options?" "The kind that make people very, very sorry they underestimated you." Over the next 2 weeks, James moved into the guest room. Just until we get this sorted, though we both knew it was because he didn't want me facing Jennifer alone. He'd wake up early and make coffee, and we'd sit on the back porch like we used to when Thomas was alive, the three of us solving the world's problems over breakfast. Except Thomas wasn't there anymore, and the problems we were solving now were the ones I never imagined I'd face. "Tell me about Richard," James said one morning, his laptop open to what looked like financial records. "What do you actually know about him?" I realized with shame that I knew almost nothing. He works for a tech startup, senior vice president of something. His family has money. Jennifer said his grandfather invented some kind of manufacturing process. "Chen Technologies," James said, reading from his screen, "founded by Richard's grandfather in 1962, sold to a Chinese conglomerate in 2015 for $340 million. Richard's trust fund should be worth at least $15 million. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. $15 million? Then why would they need my house? That's what I'm trying to figure out." James frowned at the screen. His LinkedIn says he's SVP of operations at Neural Edge, a biotech startup. But here's what's interesting. Neural Edge filed for bankruptcy 3 months ago. The company's dead, Maggie, which means Richard's been unemployed since August. Jennifer never mentioned that. I bet she didn't. He clicked through more screens, and here's the really interesting part. Richard's been selling assets. A condo in Charlotte, sold in September. A vacation property in Hilton Head, sold in October. His Porsche, his boat, even some artwork. Everything's being liquidated. A cold knot formed in my stomach. What does that mean? It means your son-in-law is in financial trouble, serious trouble. And your house, conservatively valued at $800,000, mortgage-free, is starting to look like a life raft. But his trust fund, gone. James turned the laptop to show me, invested heavily in Neural Edge stock. When the company tanked, so did his investment. He lost everything, Maggie. He's not just broke, he's in debt. Creditors are circling. There's a lien on his current house, the one he shares with Jennifer. I sat back, my mind reeling. Does Jennifer know? That's the million-dollar question. James closed the laptop. Either she knows and she's complicit in using you as a financial solution, or Richard's been lying to her and she's about to get a very unpleasant surprise. What do? We file a motion to dismiss the eviction and request a full financial disclosure from both parties. If Richard is planning to use your house as collateral for his debts, the court needs to know that and Jennifer needs to know that. The motion was filed on a Thursday. Jennifer called me on Friday, and for the first time in months, she sounded scared. Mom, what are you doing? Who's James Morrison? Richard says he's some kind of attack dog lawyer who destroys families. He's your godfather, I said coldly, and he's protecting me from my own daughter.
We weren't attacking you. We were trying to help. By evicting me from my home, by threatening to have me declared incompetent, that's help? A pause. Then, quietly, Richard said it was the only way, that you'd never agree otherwise. Jennifer, I kept my voice gentle despite the rage burning in my chest. Do you know why Richard needs this house so badly? For the baby, for our family. We've been over this. Richard lost his job 3 months ago. Did he tell you that? Silence. He's been selling everything he owns to cover debts. His trust fund is gone. He's broke, sweetheart. And he wants my house, your father's house, to save himself from bankruptcy. That's not, her voice broke. That's not true. He would have told me. Would he? I let the question hang. She hung up without answering. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. James prepped me like I was going to war, which I suppose I was. What to wear? Simple. Modest, nothing that looked expensive. What to say? Only answer questions directly. Don't volunteer information. How to act. Dignified but vulnerable. A mother hurt by her child's betrayal. Remember, he said as we drove to the courthouse, you're fighting for your dignity. Don't let them take that from you. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room with a judge's bench. Jennifer and Richard sat at one table with their lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit. We sat at another. Jennifer wouldn't look at me. Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to James apparently, was a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the papers in front of her, then looked up at Jennifer and Richard. Miss Chen, you're asking the court to evict your mother from a home you jointly own? Is that correct? Jennifer's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my clients are concerned for Mrs. Taylor's safety and well-being. She's 68 years old, living alone in a large property she no longer adequately maintains. They're seeking to transition her to appropriate senior housing, while fairly compensating her for her share of the property. How generous, Judge Morrison said dryly. And Miss Chen, you're how old? Jennifer stood, her hand on her belly. 40, Your Honor. 40. So you've been an adult for 22 years. In those 22 years, how often have you visited your mother? Jennifer's lawyer objected, but the judge waved her off. I'll allow it. Answer the question. Miss Chen, I visited regularly. Birthdays, holidays. Define regularly. Maybe every few months? Every few months, the judge made a note. And in these visits every few months, you observed concerning behavior that led you to believe your mother was incompetent to manage her own affairs? Yes, Your Honor. She forgot about a burner on the stove. She's been late paying property taxes. The house is showing signs of neglect. I see. Mr. Morrison, the judge turned to James. Your response? James stood, and I saw why people said he was formidable in court. He radiated calm authority. Your Honor, Mrs. Taylor forgot a burner one time in 7 years. The tax payments were late by less than a week on 2 occasions. These are not indicators of incompetence. They're indicators of being human. I've forgotten burners. I've been late paying bills. By the standard Mrs. Chen is proposing, half the adults in North Carolina should be forcibly relocated to assisted living. A few people in the courtroom chuckled. Even the judge smiled slightly. Furthermore, James continued, we'd like to submit evidence of Mr. Chen's actual motivations for this eviction, if I may approach. He handed a thick folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. I watched her face as she read, saw her eyebrows rise higher with each page. Mr. Chen, according to these documents, you've lost your job, liquidated most of your assets, and are facing significant debt. Is this accurate? Richard stood, his face flushed. My financial situation has no bearing on this case, Your Honor. Actually, it has every bearing. Your wife is seeking to evict her mother from their jointly owned home while you're facing bankruptcy. That suggests the true motivation isn't concern for Mrs. Taylor's well-being, but concern for your own financial survival. That's not, Richard started, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm. The judge turned to Jennifer. Mrs. Chen, did you know about your husband's financial situation? Jennifer was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. No, Your Honor. I see. Judge Morrison set the folder down. Here's what's going to happen. The eviction motion is denied. Mrs. Taylor will remain in her home. If Mrs. Chen wishes to sell her share of the property, she may offer it to Mrs. Taylor at fair market value.
If Mrs. Taylor cannot or chooses not to purchase it, Mrs. Chin may sell it to a third party, but Mrs. Taylor retains full right of occupancy until her death. Your Honor, that's not... Richard's lawyer tried. I'm not finished. The judge's voice hardened. I'm also ordering a full investigation into whether undue influence was used to add Mrs. Chin to the deed in the first place. If it's determined that Mrs. Taylor was coerced or misled, the deed will be reversed. Finally, Mr. Chin, if I find out you've harassed, threatened, or in any way attempted to intimidate Mrs. Taylor, I will hold you in contempt. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Chin? The judge's voice softened slightly. I don't know what's happening in your marriage, but I suggest you get some independent legal advice. This case appears to be more about your husband's debts than your mother's competence. Jennifer nodded, still crying, still not looking at me. As we left the courtroom, I felt like I should be celebrating. I'd won. I got to keep my house. But watching Jennifer walk away with Richard's hand gripping her elbow too tightly, I felt only sadness. She's going to leave him, James said quietly as we walked to his car. Once she understands the full scope of what he's done, she'll leave. And then what? She comes back to me expecting forgiveness? I don't know, Maggie. That's up to you. We drove home in silence. The house felt different now. Victorious, but empty. Mine, but lonely. James made dinner while I sat on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Maggie? James came out with 2 glasses of wine. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really call me? I mean, there are dozens of lawyers in Raleigh. You could have hired anyone. I took the glass of wine, thinking about how to answer. Do you remember my wedding day? He smiled. I was the best man. Kind of hard to forget. Do you remember what you said to me before the ceremony, while Thomas was getting ready? His face faded. No. You said, if he ever stops deserving you, come find me. You said it like a joke, but your eyes were serious. I never forgot that, James. Never. He sat down heavily in the chair next to mine. Maggie, I know you loved me. Maybe you still do. And I loved Thomas with everything I had, but part of me always wondered what would have happened if I'd met you first, if you'd been the one who asked me to dance at that church social instead of Thomas. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm 68 years old, and my daughter tried to steal my home, and I'm tired of wondering. I'm tired of what ifs and maybes. Thomas has been gone for 7 years and I miss him every day, but he's gone. And you're here. You dropped everything to help me. You moved into my house to protect me. You fought for me when my own child wouldn't. James set down his wine glass and took my hand. His touch was warm, familiar in a way that shouldn't have been possible after so many years. He said, I've loved you for 47 years, from the moment I introduced you to Tommy at that church social. I saw you across the room and I was walking over to ask you to dance, but Tommy saw you too, and he got there first. And I watched him fall in love with you, and I knew I had to step back because he was my best friend, and you made him happy. So I became the best man at your wedding and the godfather to your daughter, and I dated other women and built a career, and I told myself I was over you. But you weren't. But I wasn't. And when Tommy died and you called me crying, asking me to speak at the funeral, I came home and I saw you, and I realized I'd never stopped loving you. So I moved to Asheville because staying close to you while you grieved him felt like a betrayal of everything our friendship meant. I turned my hand in his, lacing our fingers together. And now? He looked at me, those kind eyes searching my face. Are you sure? Because once I stay, once we cross this line, there's no going back to just friends. James, I'm 68. I don't have time to go slow. Life is too short and too uncertain. My daughter just tried to evict me from my home. My husband is dead. The only thing I'm sure of is that you make me feel safe and seen and valued. That's more than I've had in 7 years. He kissed me then, gentle and sweet, tasting of wine and promise. When he pulled back, he was smiling. Okay then, I guess I'm staying. I guess you are. 3 months later, Jennifer came to the house, alone. She looked thinner, tired, her belly now unmistakably round under a simple dress. She stood on my porch like a stranger asking for directions. Mom? Her voice was small. Can we talk? I wanted to say no. I wanted to make her hurt the way she'd hurt me. But she was still my daughter, and she was carrying my grandchild. Come in. We sat in the living room, the same room where she'd handed me eviction papers. James stayed in the kitchen, giving us privacy, but close enough to intervene if needed. I left Richard, Jennifer said without preamble. The divorce will be final before the baby comes. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right about everything. He was using me, using you, lying about all of it. The debts were worse than James found. He'd taken out loans against his trust fund, maxed out credit cards, made terrible investments. He was drowning, and he saw our family as a life raft. She twisted her hands together. I should have listened to you. I should have protected you instead of letting him convince me to betray you. Why did you? The question that had kept me awake at night. I'm your mother, Jennifer. I changed your diapers and drove you to soccer practice and paid for your college. How could you just throw me away? She started crying, big gulping sobs that shook her shoulders. Because I was afraid. Afraid of being poor, afraid of losing everything, afraid that without Richard's money and status, I'd be nobody. And he convinced me it was the right thing, that you'd be happier in assisted living, that we'd be doing you a favor. I knew it was wrong, but I convinced myself it wasn't. I convinced myself you'd forgive me eventually. Will you? I genuinely didn't know the answer. I don't know. I hope so. But I understand if you can't. She wiped her eyes. I came to tell you I'm selling my half of the house to you for $1. My lawyer is drawing up the papers. I don't deserve anything from you or from Dad's memory. And I wanted to tell you I'm moving to Oregon, near Aunt Beth, starting over somewhere I can't run into everyone who knows what I did. What about the baby? I'll manage. I have my job still. Thank God Richard's failures haven't touched that. Beth said she'd help me find an apartment, watch the baby while I work. It won't be easy, but I don't deserve easy. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. I saw the little girl who used to bring me dandelions in the yard, the teenager who stayed up late talking to me about her dreams, the young woman who had once told me I was her hero. I saw all the versions of her, including this broken, regretful woman carrying my grandchild. Don't move to Oregon, I heard myself say. What? Don't move to Oregon. Stay here. Move back into your old room. James and I are using the guest room now. Stay here until the baby comes, until you get back on your feet. Stay here and let me help you. Mom, I can't. After everything I did. You made a terrible mistake. You let fear and greed turn you into someone you're not. But you're still my daughter, and that baby you're carrying is still my grandchild. I'm not saying I forgive you yet. I'm not saying everything's fine. But I'm saying that you don't have to do this alone. She cried harder. Why? Why would you help me after everything? Because that's what mothers do. We love our children even when they hurt us, even when they don't deserve it. I paused. And because my own mother once told me that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, I'm too old and too tired to drink that poison, Jennifer. She moved to the couch and put her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was small. I stroked her hair and let her cry, and I cried too, for everything we'd lost and everything we might still save. James appeared in the doorway, a question in his eyes. I nodded, and he smiled, understanding without words that our quiet life was about to get louder, messier, more complicated. But that was okay. Families were supposed to be messy. Jennifer moved back in a week later. The first few days were awkward. Too many apologies, too much painful politeness, both of us unsure how to be around each other. But gradually we found our rhythm. She'd work from home in the mornings while I tended the garden. James would make dinner. He turned out to be an excellent cook. And the three of us would eat together, talking about everything except the elephant in the room. One evening, about a month after she'd moved back, Jennifer brought down a box from the attic. I found these, she said, setting them on the coffee table. Dad's photos, from before I was born. Inside were hundreds of pictures I'd forgotten about. Thomas and James as kids, skinny and gap-toothed, arms around each other. Thomas and me on our first date at the county fair. The three of us at the beach, James pretending to throw Thomas into the ocean. Our wedding, Thomas looking at me like I'd hung the moon while James stood beside him, his face carefully neutral. You loved Mom even then, James, she said, studying that wedding photo. I can see it in your face. James glanced at me, then nodded. I did, but Tommy loved her more, and he was my best friend. Some things are more important than what you want. Like family, she said quietly. Like family. She was quiet for a moment, studying the photos. Are you two together? I finished. Yes. Is that okay? It's more than okay. Dad would have wanted you to be happy, Mom. And Uncle James? She smiled at him. You've been waiting long enough. The baby came in April, a spring baby like Jennifer had been. We rushed to the hospital at 3 a.m., James driving carefully while Jennifer canted through contractions in the back seat, and I held her hand and told her to breathe, just breathe. Sophia Grace Chen was born at 6:47 a.m., weighing 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with a full head of black hair and lungs that announced her displeasure at the world immediately. She's perfect, Jennifer sobbed as they placed the baby on her chest. Mom, look, she's perfect. I looked at my granddaughter, this tiny, perfect person who existed despite everything, and I felt something in my chest ease. The anger I'd been carrying, the hurt and betrayal, it didn't disappear entirely, but it became smaller, less important than this moment, than this new life. You're going to be a wonderful mother, I told Jennifer. I had a good example, she whispered back. We brought Sophia home 2 days later to a house full of balloons and flowers. James had converted the old sewing room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and assembling a crib he'd bought without telling anyone. He held Sophia with the careful reverence of someone who'd never had children of his own, but understood how precious they were. She looks like Tommy, he said, studying her face. Same nose, same stubborn chin. God help us all if she's as stubborn as Dad was, Jennifer laughed. Over the following weeks, we settled into a new kind of family. Jennifer and Sophia in her old bedroom, James and me in the master suite. All of us orbiting around this tiny person who needed constant feeding and changing and loving. The house that had felt too big and too empty suddenly felt perfectly sized, full of life and noise and purpose. One night, when Sophia was 3 weeks old and finally sleeping for more than 2 hours at a stretch, Jennifer came downstairs to find James and me slow dancing in the kitchen to music only we could hear. "You two are disgustingly cute," she said, smiling. "We're old," I corrected. "When old people are cute, it's called wholesome." "Whatever it's called, I'm glad." She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where so many battles had been fought. "I've been thinking about something. The house. I know I signed over my half, but I want you to know that that was right. This is your home. Yours and Uncle James's now. When I'm back on my feet, when Sophia's a little older, we'll get our own place. Start fresh." "Or," James said, still holding me in a dance position, "you could stay. The house is plenty big enough, and Sophia shouldn't grow up without knowing her grandmother's cooking." "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," I said firmly. "You're family. This is what family does. We mess up, we hurt each other, we forgive, we start over. You're my daughter, Jennifer. This is your home too, for as long as you want it to be." She cried, again, because pregnancy hormones were apparently a gift that kept giving, and we all hugged in my kitchen, 3 adults and 1 sleeping baby, rebuilding something that had nearly been destroyed. 6 months later, James and I got married in the backyard, the same backyard where Thomas had built that porch, where Jennifer had played as a child, where Sophia would eventually take her first steps. It was a small ceremony, just us, Jennifer, baby Sophia, my sister Beth, who flew in from Oregon, and a handful of close friends. I wore a simple cream dress, and James wore the same suit he'd worn as Thomas's best man 47 years earlier. It still fit, which he was absurdly proud of. "Do you?" the minister asked him. "I do," he said, looking at me like I was 25 years old again. "I have for 47 years." "Do you?" the minister asked me. I looked at this good man who'd loved me patiently, who'd protected me fiercely, who'd become the family Jennifer and I both needed. "I do, finally." When we kissed, Sophia started crying and everyone laughed, and Jennifer whispered, "Dad would have been happy for you." And I realized she was right. Thomas had loved us both. He would have wanted us to take care of each other, to find happiness even after he was gone. Our love didn't diminish what I had with him. It honored it by showing that a heart could hold more than one great love in a lifetime. That evening, after the guests had left and Jennifer had taken Sophia up for bed, James and I sat on the porch in the twilight. "No regrets?" he asked, holding my hand. "Only that we waited so long. We couldn't have done this before. You needed to grieve Tommy. I needed to step back and let you, and Jennifer needed to fall and learn to stand back up. Sometimes the timing has to be wrong before it can be right." I leaned my head on his shoulder, breathing in the evening air, listening to the sounds of my house, my home, settling around us. Jennifer moving upstairs, Sophia's sleeping murmurs, the old pipes creaking, all the familiar noises of a life being lived. "I thought I'd lost everything," I said quietly. "When the eviction notice came, when Jennifer chose Richard over me, I thought that was it. I'd lost my daughter, my home, my purpose. I was ready to give up." "But you didn't." "But I didn't. I made one phone call to a man I hadn't talked to in years, and everything changed." "That's not entirely accurate," James said, a smile in his voice. "You could have called anyone. Any lawyer could have helped you keep the house. You called me because some part of you knew I'd been waiting. Some part of you was ready to take a chance on something new." He was right. I'd kept that business card for 47 years, not because I thought I'd need a lawyer, but because I couldn't let go of the possibility it represented, the road not taken, the what if that whispered in quiet moments. And when everything else was stripped away, when I had nothing left to lose, I had finally been brave enough to explore that possibility.
Do you think we'll get to 47 more years? I asked, only half joking. Maggie, we're both pushing 70. I'll settle for 20 good years. Hell, I'll settle for 5. However long we get, I'll make sure they're the best years of your life. I said, they already are, and meant it. We sat there as the stars came out, two old people who loved each other from a distance for most of their lives, finally together in a house full of second chances and new beginnings. 3 years later, I'm 71 and James is 72, and we're teaching Sophia to ride a bike in the same driveway where I taught Jennifer 35 years ago. Jennifer is back in school, getting her MBA, determined to rebuild her career on her own terms. She's dating a kind man who teaches middle school science and doesn't care about trust funds or status symbols. The house is in my name alone now, with clear instructions in my will. When I die, it goes to Sophia, with Jennifer as trustee until she's 25. No joint ownership, no confusion, no possibility of history repeating itself. But I don't think it will. Jennifer learned her lesson the hard way. She saw what greed and fear could make her become, and she chose differently. She chooses differently every day. As for James and me, we're making up for lost time. We travel when we can, short trips, because we're both too old for marathon sightseeing. We read books together on the porch. We cook elaborate meals and teach Sophia to crack eggs. We argue about politics and laugh at old movies and fall asleep holding hands. We're ordinary in every way except one. We waited 47 years to be together, and we don't take a single day for granted. People ask me sometimes if I regret marrying Thomas, if I wish I'd chosen James first. The answer is no. I loved Thomas with everything I had. He gave me Jennifer, gave me a life of stability and partnership and quiet devotion. What I have with James is different, not better, just different. You can have more than one great love in a lifetime. You can be 68 and homeless and desperate, and you can make one phone call that changes everything. You can forgive your daughter for breaking your heart. You can build a new family from the broken pieces of the old one. You can start over, no matter how old you are, no matter how impossible it seems. That's what I learned in the year I almost lost everything. Loss is not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the next chapter. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the next chapter is the best one yet. My name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old, and I'm sitting on my porch in the house my first husband built, married to the man who loved me first, watching my daughter teach my granddaughter to ride a bike. I am, against all odds, happy. And happiness, I've learned, is the sweetest revenge. The end. So what did you think? Did Margaret's story touch your heart? Did James's 47-year wait make you believe in second chances? And what about Jennifer? Could you forgive a daughter who tried to take everything? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story moved you, send a super thanks so I can keep bringing you these powerful life stories. Your support means everything. Don't forget to check out the 2 stories on your screen right now. They're just as powerful as this one. Subscribe so you never miss a new story. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to rewrite your story. With love and respect.